Blood on ancient stone. The ruins of Thornhaven rose before them like broken teeth against the morning sky. What had once been King Aldrich's seat of power, before it became Stormmoor, before 3,000 years of erosion and forgetting, now stood as a monument to fallen glory. Massive stone walls, some still 20 feet high, formed a rough circle around what had been the Great Hall. Collapsed archways and shattered columns jutted from earth, reclaimed by twisted grass and thorny vines. And at the center, where Aldrich's throne had once stood, green light pulsed with sickening rhythm. Edrick raised his fist, signaling halt. The 4 riders stopped on the ridge overlooking the ruins, close enough now to hear the chanting. The cultists' voices rose and fell in unnatural cadence, speaking words in the old tongue that made the amulet around Edrick's neck burn hot against his skin. 23, Illyria whispered, her sharp eyes counting the robed figures moving in ritualistic patterns around the central altar. No, 24. One's behind the broken pillar on the east side. Corrupted? Rose asked, her hand resting on her sword hilt. All of them. Shamaz's voice was grim. Look at how they move. No natural rhythm to their steps, and the green glow in their eyes. I can see it even from here. Edrick studied the scene, his warrior's mind cataloging details. The altar was ancient stone, probably original to Thornhaven itself, now slick with fresh blood that caught the green light. The cultists had arranged themselves in 3 concentric circles around it, the outer ring moving clockwise, the middle counterclockwise, the inner ring standing motionless with arms raised. At the altar's base, a chasm had opened in the earth. Not wide, perhaps 3 feet across, but deep enough that the green light emanating from it seemed to come from somewhere far below the world. The ritual's nearly complete, Shamaz said, and Edrick heard the tension in his old friend's voice. See how the light pulses faster? They're opening a direct channel to the Devourer's prison. If they finish... They won't finish! Edrick drew the sealing blade, and the weapon sang as it left its sheath. The dark steel seemed to drink the morning light, and the symbols etched along its length blazed with silver fire. The amulet around his neck pulsed in response, and for a moment Edrick felt the weight of 3,000 years pressing down on him. King Aldric had stood here once, in this very place, and made choices that echoed through the centuries. Now it was Edric's turn. Illyria, circle left and come in from the east, he commanded, his voice steady despite the fear coiling in his gut. Take out the lone cultist first, then work your way toward the altar. Rose, you're with me. We go straight down the center, break their formation. Shamaz, stay mounted on the ridge and watch for reinforcements. If this goes wrong... It won't, Rose said firmly. She drew her own blade, the steel bright against the corrupted landscape. We've faced worse odds. Have we? Edrick met her eyes, saw the determination there, the absolute faith. She'd been 7 years old when he pulled her from the cellar in Kirkwall, and now she was 25 and one of the finest warriors in Stormmoor. If anyone could stand beside him against this darkness, it was Rose. Through darkness and light, Rose said quietly. Until the end, Edrick finished. The old oath, spoken between them 1,000 times. He looked to Illyria, saw her nod once, sharp and sure, then to Shamaz, who raised one hand in blessing. May the old gods watch over you, the healer said, and may King Aldric's spirit guide your blade. Edrick kicked his gray stallion forward, and the attack began. They came down the ridge at a gallop, Rose slightly behind and to his right, Illyria breaking away to sweep wide around the ruins. The cultists' chanting faltered as they heard the thunder of hooves, but they didn't break formation. Instead, the outer ring stopped moving and turned to face the threat, their movements eerily synchronized. Edrick saw their faces as he charged, human once but transformed by corruption, eyes that glowed with green fire, skin gone gray and cracked like old leather, mouths that moved in unison, speaking words that shouldn't be possible for individual throats to form. These weren't just corrupted humans. They were vessels, puppets for something vast and ancient that watched through their eyes. For Stormmoor, Edrick roared, and drove his horse straight into their line. The sealing blade cut through the first cultist like he was made of smoke. The man, if he could still be called that, simply dissolved, his robes falling empty to the ground as green mist dispersed into the air. The blade's silver symbols flared brighter, and Edrick felt power surge through his arm. This weapon was made for exactly this purpose, to cut the Devourer's influence, to sever its connection to the world. Rose was right behind him, her sword singing as it found targets. She fought with brutal efficiency, each strike calculated to disable or kill. A cultist lunged at her with hands that ended in claws, and she sidestepped, her blade opening his throat. Another came from her blind side, but she'd already sensed him, spinning to drive her sword through his chest. The chanting grew louder. The inner circle hadn't broken formation, their arms still raised, their voices building to a crescendo. The green light from the chasm pulsed faster, faster, and Edrick saw something beginning to rise from the depths. A shadow, a suggestion of vast, writhing bulk. "The altar," he shouted. "We have to reach the altar!" But the cultists were adapting now, their initial surprise fading. The middle ring broke formation and surged toward Edrick and Rose, moving with inhuman speed. There were too many. Even corrupted, even hollow vessels, they had numbers and they had the Devourer's strength flowing through them. A cultist grabbed Edrick's leg, trying to pull him from the saddle. The touch burned even through his armor, and he felt corruption trying to seep into his flesh. He brought the sealing blade down, severing the arm, and the cultist fell back shrieking. But two more took his place. Then Illyria struck from the east. She came in low and fast, her twin daggers flashing in the green light. The lone cultist she'd been assigned never saw her coming. One moment he was chanting, the next he was on the ground with his throat opened. Illyria didn't stop moving, flowing through the cultists' ranks like smoke, her blades finding gaps in their defense that shouldn't exist. She was Urith, descended from warriors who had fought the Devourer 3,000 years ago, and their skills lived in her blood. The pressure on Edrick and Rose eased as the cultist had to divide their attention. Edrick urged his horse forward, trampling over the corrupted, the sealing blade clearing a path. 20 feet to the altar. 15. 10. The lead cultist, the one who stood at the altar itself, his hands pressed against the blood-slick stone, turned to face them. His hood fell back, revealing a face that had once been human, but was now barely recognizable. The flesh had split and reformed, creating geometric patterns that hurt to look at. His eyes were pits of green fire. When he spoke, it wasn't with one voice, but with dozens, hundreds, a chorus of the damned. Aldrich's blood returns to Aldrich's throne. The cycle completes itself. Welcome home, King of Stormmoor. Edrick swung the sealing blade in a wide arc, pouring all his strength into the strike. The lead cultist raised one hand almost casually, and green energy crackled between them. The blade connected with the barrier, and the impact threw Edrick from his horse. He hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with the blade still in his hand. Rose was there instantly, putting herself between Edrick and the lead cultist. "You want him, you go through me." The cultist laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "The woman warrior. The child saved from Kirkwall. We remember you, Rose Kirk. We remember your family's screams." Rose's face went white, then red with rage. She charged, and the cultist met her with hands wreathed in green fire. They clashed in the center of the ruins, steel against corruption, and Edrick saw Rose being driven back step by step. The cultist was too strong, too fast, powered by something that shouldn't exist in the mortal world. Edrick forced himself to his feet, every muscle screaming. The amulet around his neck was burning now, the heat intense enough to sear his skin. But with the heat came clarity. He could see the lines of power flowing from the chasm to the cultists, feeding them strength. And he could see the weak point, the altar itself, the focus of the ritual. "Illyria," he shouted. "The altar! Break the altar!" She heard him, understood instantly. While the remaining cultists were focused on Rose's desperate fight and Edrick's apparent weakness, Illyria sprinted for the blood-slick stone. She leaped, her daggers raised, and brought them down with all her strength on the altar's edge. The ancient stone cracked. The chanting stopped. Every cultist froze mid-motion, their heads snapping toward the altar in perfect unison. The lead cultist screamed, a sound of such rage and pain that it seemed to tear the air itself. He released Rose and spun toward Illyria, green energy gathering in his hands for a killing blow. Edrick was already moving. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, the sealing blade held low and ready. The lead cultist saw him coming, tried to redirect his attack, but it was too late. Edrick drove the blade up through the cultist's chest, through the heart, and the silver symbols along the blade exploded with white light. The cultist's scream cut off. His body convulsed, green energy pouring from the wound, and then he simply collapsed into ash. The other cultists fell in the same instant, their connection to the Devourer severed. 23 bodies hit the ground, and the sudden silence was deafening. The green light from the chasm flickered, dimmed, but didn't go out entirely. Edrick approached the edge carefully, the sealing blade still drawn. He could feel something down there, something vast and hungry, and it was aware of him. A voice rose from the depths, not heard with ears but felt in his bones. "Aldrich's blood! Aldrich's blade! You come to us at last! We have waited so long, little king, so very long." "Seal it!" Shamaz's voice came from behind him. The healer had ridden down from the ridge, his face pale but determined. "The blade can seal it, strike the altar, what remains of it, and close the channel." Edrick raised the sealing blade, but before he could strike, the voice spoke again. "You cannot seal what you do not understand. You cannot fight what you are bound to. Ask your healer, little king. Ask him what the texts in Naswaiwana truly say about Aldrich's binding." Edrick looked at Shamaz, saw something flicker in the old healer's eyes. Fear and guilt. "Shamaz?" Rose's voice was sharp. She'd picked herself up, was limping toward them with her sword still drawn. "What is it talking about?" Shamaz's hands trembled. The binding, it wasn't just a sealing. Aldrick didn't imprison the Devourer. He couldn't. No power in the world could contain it permanently. So he did something else. He divided it. Divided it? Edrick felt ice in his veins. "What do you mean, divided it?" "He split the Devourer's essence across 7 bloodlines," Shamaz whispered. 7 kings, 7 kingdoms, each carrying a fragment of the darkness. As long as the bloodlines endured, the Devourer would remain broken, unable to reform. But if the bloodlines failed, if they weakened or ended, it would come back together, Illyria finished, her voice hollow. That's why the seals are failing. The bloodlines have diluted over 3,000 years. 6 of the 7 are gone entirely. Only 1 remains strong enough to still hold its fragment. Edrick looked down at the sealing blade in his hand, at the symbols that matched those on his amulet, and understood. Aldrich's line, my line. "Yes," the voice from the chasm said, and now it sounded almost pleased. "You carry our heart, little king, the greatest fragment, the core of our being. It has lived in your blood for 3,000 years, sleeping, waiting, and now the other fragments call to it. They want to be whole again. And you, bearing the blade, standing at the place where the binding was made, you are the key that will unlock us." The chasm's green light pulsed, and Edrick felt something stir inside him. A darkness he'd never noticed before, woven so deeply into his being that it was indistinguishable from his own soul. The Devourer's heart, hidden in his bloodline, now awakening in response to its scattered pieces. "Strike the altar," Shamaz urged. "Seal this channel before." Pain exploded through Edrick's chest. He looked down and saw green light emanating from beneath his armor, from his skin, from his very bones. The fragment was responding to the nearness of its source, trying to rejoin the whole. "Edrick!" Rose grabbed his arm, and he felt her touch like an anchor to reality. Fight it! He wanted to. By all the gods, he wanted to. But the darkness was so strong, and it wasn't external. It was him. It had always been him. Every king of his line had carried this burden without knowing, had passed it down generation after generation, and now it was his turn to face the truth. The sealing blade. The weapon that could kill the Devourer permanently. But to use it, the wielder had to sacrifice their blood. All of it, completely. And now Edrick understood why. The blade wouldn't just kill the Devourer. It would kill the fragment inside him, the piece that made him part of the binding. It would end his bloodline and break the chain that had held the darkness for 3,000 years. But if the other 6 fragments were already free, already gathering, the ritual, Edrick gasped through the pain. The cultists weren't trying to free the Devourer. They were trying to call the fragments together, to reunite them. "And we stopped them," Illyria said. "For now." "For now," the voice from the chasm agreed, and it sounded amused. "But there are other rituals, other altars. Thornhaven was only the first, the weeping stones, old Ravenhold, the forsaken lake itself. We will be whole again, little king." The only question is whether you will fight us from without or from within." The green light in Edrick's chest pulsed brighter, and he felt the fragment testing the boundaries of his will. If he weakened, if he let it take control even for a moment, he would become like the cultists, a vessel for the Devourer's will. With the last of his strength, Edrick raised the sealing blade and drove it into the cracked altar. The white light from the blade met the green light from the chasm, and the world exploded into brilliance. When Edrick's vision cleared, the chasm was gone. The altar was split completely in half, and the green light had faded to nothing. The corrupted bodies of the cultists were already beginning to decay into dust, returning to the earth they'd been torn from. But inside Edrick's chest, the fragment remained. Dormant now, pushed back by the sealing blade's power, but not destroyed. Never destroyed. It was part of him, woven into his very essence, and it would be there until the day he died. Or until he chose to use the blade's true power and end it forever. "We need to move," Shamaz said quietly. "The Weeping Stones are a day's ride north. If there's another ritual—" "There will be," Edrick said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, hollow and tired. "There will always be another ritual, another attempt. Until we face the Devourer directly." Rose helped him to his feet, and he saw the worry in her eyes. She knew. They all knew. The fragment inside him was a sword hanging over all their heads, and with each battle, each use of the sealing blade, it would grow stronger. The weapon that could save the world might also be the thing that destroyed it. As they gathered their horses and prepared to leave the ruins of Thornhaven, Edrick looked back at the broken altar one last time. King Aldrich had stood here 3,000 years ago and made an impossible choice: sacrifice himself completely or bind the Devourer at the cost of cursing his descendants. Aldrich had chosen the binding, had chosen to let his children carry the burden. Now Edrick had to decide if he would make the same choice or a different one. The morning sun climbed higher, indifferent to the battles of men and monsters, and in the ruins of Thornhaven, the blood on ancient stone began to dry, leaving only dark stains that would last for centuries more.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.